Hey there guys and gals, welcome back to Back Pocket Game Reviews, and today there was a live stream that I actually almost overslept to. That's how tired I've been due to this weekend, which we'll address in another video. Those of you who know that I work retail probably can already assume why if you've been out anywhere over this weekend. But Sony did a live stream kind of about the PS5. Actually, I shouldn't say kind of about the PS5. It's very much so about the PS5. However, I anticipated it was going to be a reveal where I would actually get to see the physical hardware. I wanted to see the plastic box you were going to encase everything in. But instead, it turned out to be very much so about tech specs and done by the most boring human being I've ever seen in my entire life. No offense to the guy. I'm sure he's probably a genius, hence why he is so boring. So, I have a decent understanding of tech specs. When I say that they went in depth, even for me, there was a lot of things that had they had not broken down 100%, I would not have fully understood. Not a lot, but there were things where it was like, where the hell are you going with this? One of the big focuses that they definitely took on, and something we're just going to address up front, is that not every teraflop is created equal. And to a certain regard, that is accurate. So when you go over and you look at a company like Intel, and you look at stuff that Intel has done and made over the years, one of Intel's biggest things is not that the quality of the core is more important than the amount of cores. It's always been one of their biggest marketing pieces. That was actually one of their biggest things that they explained during the years that AMD was releasing the A4, A6, A10, those processors. And it was very much so true in terms of those. So Intel was able to do more with one core than what AMD was able to do with four, or you get the point. They had stuff like hyper-threading and whatnot. And a lot of Sony stuff kind of very sounded much like that. And to a degree, I don't know how much of that's going to be marketing jargon. Because it can be. It very, very much so could be. And it also depends on the developer utilization of that particular architecture. Because they are using a very unique architecture to themselves. While it is still very similar to just straightforward PC hardware, it is still more similar to them also taking their own kind of approach, such as like they did with the PS3 cell architecture. And the PS3 cell architecture did so poorly because no developer enjoyed developing for it. Literally, Xbox and PC were very similar at that time. They were still close in a certain way, whereas PS3 was also very different. That's why you wound up with a lot of PS3 ports, despite supposedly being more powerful than the Xbox 360, not being able to actually look better than the Xbox 360, and actually looking worse because they were just sloppily done ports for the PS3. Or you also wind up with certain things due to them using split RAM, where 256 is allocated to this, and they don't talk. That's when you kind of wind up with the issue of, like, Skyrim, for example, and their random crashing and save states. Skyrim ran like a turd on the PS3. And that's always the thing you always get kind of nervous about. So how much of this is going to interfere if the developer doesn't utilize it correctly or in a way that's going to be groundbreaking, so to speak? Another takeaway from that whole segment was it has less teraflops than the Xbox Series X. Yeah, so technically, if we're just looking in terms of off of paper, the Xbox One X is more powerful. Yep. Yeah, we'll just let that sink in for a second. So PS4 or PS5 is about 10.3 teraflops. Again, this is where they really tried to make sure you understood that not all teraflops are created equal. And as I said, I do, to a huge degree, agree with that to an extent. To an extent. So when you go over to your Nintendo Switch, let's just say you have a Nintendo Switch over there, that is 1 teraflop. You got one. It's Xbox One X and PS4 both dump on the Switch in terms of power. But then you can see a game like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, due to its art style and different things, look better than, well, some Xbox One X games and PS4 games that I've seen, despite it having that huge jump in power. So I am interested to see how that truly plays out. They did talk about their custom I/O controller, which is essentially what's telling all of the parts how to communicate with each other to an extent. And another thing they did address that actually is very exciting, especially for someone who owns a PS4, there's this one obnoxious thing that PlayStation does so incredibly terribly compared to Xbox, and that is updates. When you have an update, it has to then reinsert the data and then recopy the whole game back into order, because it can't just index it on its own. But when you go over to your Xbox and you download an update takes me maybe 5-10 minutes on my Xbox. An update could take me an hour or two on my PlayStation. So they did talk about a lot of that. And I mean, even Xbox has kind of been talking a lot about that and ways to make it faster. They just didn't do what Sony did and go, we're going to break down every tech spec to you. A lot of that's because Xbox is already running on similar PC architectures, which is part of why Xbox is very easy to develop for, is it's essentially just a PC. So I am happy to see that getting addressed, though. I'd also like to see their network utilization getting addressed. If you own a PS4, you probably are aware that unless you're using a VPN or another workaround, if you have really fast internet, PlayStation doesn't know how to handle it. Not kidding you, I have 500 megabits per second on my internet, on my download speed. Half the time I run a speed test, PlayStation's like, you have 40. You're right. It's fine. You run speed tests on the Xbox, it's like 300! It's just like, I don't know. And they're both hardwired, both using gigabit Ethernet cable. No. Good old Cat 6 can't get you there, huh, Sony? So that's one of those things I would like to see addressed, but unfortunately network utilization and network capabilities were not something that was talked about during that stream. Now, keep in mind, they did talk about that the logic of the PS4 will be integrated into the architecture, the hardware architecture, so the CPU, GPU, all that stuff, and the way it's able to run it. So almost all PS4 games should be backwards compatible at launch. And they talked about how you should be able to just put all your PS4 games on a hard drive and plug it in. I don't know if I interpreted that wrong, but essentially from what I gathered, I should be able to take my external hard drive with all my PS4 games, remove it, and plug it in. Another cool thing, and so this is also going to bring me into a topic about the Xbox Series X that I can't give you a 100% answer on either. Xbox Series X has a mysterious plug port on the back that everyone is anticipating is for a new form of storage, faster storage. I'm really hoping that's the case, but PlayStation's actually giving you the option to internally install a M2 solid state drive. And supposedly, from what I understand, is it will be running on the PCIe 4.0 architecture, which is kind of cool. So they did state that they were going to have the fastest solid state drive on the market. And it's able to do 5 gigabits per second. When you hear the word gigabits, just for those of you who aren't tech savvy, that is a speed reference. When you hear the word gigabyte, that is a size reference. It's just like teraflops is a speed reference. Terabyte is a size reference. The M2 architecture is probably easily the fastest version of a solid state drive. However, it's also pretty much assumed that an M2 solid state drive is the same thing that's going to be in the Xbox Series X. So they should be very similar, I would assume, to a huge extent. And seeing how terribly Sony utilized those updates last gen, tried to blame it on the hard drives, Xbox used the same hard drive as you and didn't have that problem. So this is where my big issue comes into play. I really would have liked more out of this press conference, just for being 100% fair right off the bat. There are already hard drives that are hitting that same speed that PlayStation announced. So that's kind of why I'm a little disappointed to hear them go, we're going to have the fastest solid state drive on the market. but there are PCI M.2 hard drives that are hitting those same speeds, or very close to. And by the time that PlayStation 5 is actually out on the market, there will be ones faster than it. And they even acknowledged that during the stream. And that is a hard part when building a console, is you're trying to build something years in advance that when it comes out will still be relevant in terms of hardware. Whereas with my PC, I can just go buy a brand new M.2 drive, pop it right in, and boom, it's in there. So it's very hard to do that, and I'm able to acknowledge that. But I think as a console maker, if I were a console maker, I would shut my damn mouth until I have something to show. Personal opinion. And I'm not just saying Sony does that. Then they also talked about my favorite topic with the PlayStation. My absolute favorite one. This is my pet peeve about PlayStation. The fan. How they suck at cooling down an actual system. If you own a PS4 Pro, you're aware that sometimes when running like games like God of War, it sounds like you're running a small airport through your living room. Yeah. Jet engines are probably not as noisy as what my PS4 can get up to when running God of War and trying to run checkerboarded 4K, okay? And don't get me wrong, God of War is a gorgeous game. However, they started talking about their capabilities of understanding the way of cooling it. They didn't state what they're using to cooling it. They just stated power consumption. So they did go over the power consumption topic, which does play a part into the cooling here. But they never stated if they're using a fan or if they're going to use liquid cooling. And when you look at something like the Xbox One X, they used a vapor chamber, which is kind of similar to like a quasi-liquid cooling system. But when you hear an Xbox Series X, which is more powerful than a PS4 Pro, and you hear them side by side, the Xbox Series X is like a whisper. The PlayStation 4 Pro is like going to a feminist rally and seeing Anita Sarkeesian there. Okay, that is essentially your loudness difference between the two. But they did talk about their capabilities of understanding and being able to utilize different cooldown methods and hopefully have less reverberation out of the cooling system, which makes me think it's still a fan. Possibly. There's still just a lot of stuff we don't know, and I really would like to have seen the actual plastic box. Like, I've seen the Xbox Series X. Can I see the PS5 now? I'd really appreciate just getting a look at the plastic that you decided to encase this son of a bitch in. Because the Xbox Series X is actually kind of cool design with the way it's just straight up tube. It's pretty much a mini PC tower. So that means it's going to be able to cool itself relatively easily, especially with the vents being on the top and the bottom, being able to pull, and should make cooling a very interesting concept with the way that they're planning to do it on the Series X. And seeing as how well they did it on the One X, I am very excited to see Xbox do it that route. Xbox getting very experimental, but essentially just building PCs at this point. Sony is trying to make more architecture that's formed to them and what they want, which you kind of wind up with this double-edged sword now. So it'll be, and for being fair, that whole conference was supposed to be at GDC, which is Game Developers Conference. It really wasn't meant as much for you and me as it was meant for the people that are looking for those tech specs and for, news, people like Digital Foundry, even developers. A lot of developers are probably sitting there like, I want to understand. And it is cool to see that they put so much time into developing unique hardware. However, as I said, it can also be a bad thing. They did focus a lot on audio, and that's exciting because PS3 actually had really good audio. That was one thing the PS3 definitely did very much so better over the 360. It's just visuals suffered because of the cell processing. And then when you get over to PS4, it's even something they addressed is they kind of dropped the ball on audio. And they talked a lot about 3D audio. And 3D audio is pretty cool. If you've never used it, if you have a gaming PC, go turn on Windows Sonic or purchase a Dolby Atmos. But just use Windows Sonic. It's free and does pretty much the exact same damn thing. Or if you have an Xbox, you can go into the settings as well and turn on Windows Sonic, and every stereo headset that you currently own just became a 3D virtual surround sound that's also able to do top and bottom. So it's literally everywhere it's able to detect noise. And that's kind of cool because Sony had it on a few games on the PS4. So there are a few, and you have to own a very specific set of headphones, which was the PlayStation Platinum headphones. And when I say a very few amount of games, I mean, I'm pretty sure I can count them between my two hands. Whereas Xbox doing Windows Sonic was able to do it on all of them. So it's funny that they're talking about, because if you look at the PS4 and you look at the Xbox One, I'm pointing over here because this is where mine are. They're very similar architectures and very similar pieces of hardware to a huge extent. So for Xbox to have been able to do it very easily, but for Sony to be like, we don't know. We have no idea. It wasn't powerful enough. We couldn't do it. It's very mind-boggling to me because it shouldn't have been. It really shouldn't have been. I mean, hell, the Xbox was considered less powerful at launch. And it wasn't, that gap wasn't closed until the S and X came out. That was when Xbox pulled a little bit ahead in terms of power. And I get it. A lot of you are like, well, Xbox didn't have any exclusives, so of course they have more time to sit there and worry about that. That's not true. There's a hardware team, software team. They're completely separate entities to an extent. Actually, pretty much in general, they are completely separate entities unless the software team comes to the hardware team and goes, we'd really like to be able to utilize this. So, for one to be able to do it and one to be able to like, no, couldn't figure that one out. Too much. Is very mind-boggling. And they even acknowledged, though, that they kind of dropped the ball and then stated that their only real steps forward in audio on the PS4 was with PSVR, because PSVR actually is really cool audio. Not gonna lie. If you haven't used PSVR, try it out. It's pretty sweet. So I would like to see that 3D become more of a standard, but I'm going to go ahead and safely assume that with Xbox, since they already implemented Windows Sonic and doing it with headphones for pretty much the last 2-3 years, I'm going to go ahead and safely assume Windows is probably also doing the same thing, or Microsoft Windows. And that's the thing, is you've got variables that each one is kind of addressed, like each one's kind of made their point of what they think is relevant topic. I will say this, I feel like for Sony to really give this as their first, outside of, hey, we're making a PS5, because that's pretty much all we've gotten so far. Hey, you're getting a PS5. Yeah, it's going to have backwards compatibility. That's it. That's your interaction with Sony on the PS5 up until today. I feel like this was done in a very boring and droll manner. I don't feel like it really captivated home audiences. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you actually absolutely loved it. Maybe you liked that they took a Mr. Rogers, let me explain everything kind of approach as we go through it. And don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it because I am a spec guy, but there wasn't a lot to be like, oh my god, that's so sweet. Whereas Xbox gives you like these sexy shots of the console. They're like, look at this thing. Look at this bad boy right here. They're essentially giving you console porn. That is what they're doing. And Sony's just like, we're gonna read some numbers off a spec sheet. And that's also a big part of where Xbox screwed up last generation. Xbox went that kind of route that Sony is going right now. If you really think about it, it is anyone's ball game at this point. Especially if Xbox turns out to be more powerful, ball might wind up in Xbox's court, especially with them having a lot of first-party titles that will be coming out quickly on the Xbox One, or on the Series X, because they've kind of delayed everything from the Xbox One. I get it, well, you're playing the games on your Xbox One S. Yes, for now, until they start making stuff that doesn't really run well, or console generations are getting blurred by Xbox, and it's a very pro-consumer way of handling it. And to a certain degree, I would say Sony's kind of doing a similar method with supporting backwards compatibility right off the bat, and some of their games will run on both right at launch. So it'll be, this game came out for both, but how long each one is going to support that is where that question mark kind of arises. And that's not unusual. So when you look at Breath of the Wild actually came out on the Wii U and the Switch at the same time. Or not at the same time. It was out... Was it at the same time? I don't even remember. I'm pretty sure the Wii U version was later. But then, when you look at the end of most console generations, you still have games that work with both. That's not unusual. And when you look at PC, hell, I can run a Windows 95 game as long as I'm willing to fiddle around in compatibility mode and figure it all out, which is essentially what PS5 is supposed to be able to do for you. So it'll be interesting to see once we can actually see like the parts that we're really interested about, like how well is external hard drive, like my actual hard drives I plug in, how well are they going to be utilized? What's that damn slot on the back of the Xbox for? I have so many questions right now, but none of them are really giving me the answers I want. They're giving me these technical specifications. And tech specs are great because it gives you an idea of the power, but how it's utilized is the biggest part of that. You can have all the specs in the world, but if it's utilized poorly or not optimized correctly, you're still going to have problems. So there's still a lot to wonder there. Guys, let me know what you thought of this today down in the comments down below. Did you find this to be a snooze fest? And judging by the comments in that stream, a lot of people did. A lot of people. Hell, even judging by some of the comments of my friends, a lot of people found that to be a snooze fest. And here I am like, I like learning about tech specs. I'm cool with this. Doesn't really hype me for the console. Like, I'm not sitting here like, oh god. But yeah. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a thumbs up. Those thumbs up are very important. That's what helps us grow the community and pull in more audience members. Obviously, I'm pretty sure I'm shadow banned on YouTube. I'm actually having people message me now telling me they don't even see my videos when they search for them. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what I did. I'm sorry, YouTube. And if you're new here, don't forget to click that subscribe button. I like to see you all here, and you get to see me wearing very interesting t-shirts and sitting on my living room table with all my cool collectibles behind me. Look, it's a Squatty Potty t-shirt. Plop, plop, baby. I'm wearing a t-shirt about poop this whole video, and pointed out at the very end. Guys, I'll see you all soon. I'll have plenty more content coming for you, so stick around.